Divorce is one of life's most difficult transitions. What if there was a way to do it that was kinder and more collaborative? That's exactly what we'll be exploring today.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, so I'm David.
I'm Holly. I work as a divorce specialist at Amicable.
Holly is from Amicable, a pioneering service that changes the way that divorce is dealt with in the UK in the modern world. Rather than the traditional route, Amicable supports both partners in working together through the process.
What Amicable tries to do is we're focused on collaboration, on people maintaining a relationship, and in some instances being able to improve their relationship through the process of divorce. So practically that looks like working with both people instead of just one person, so that there's more of an open communication channel there.
You'll hear how changes in the law have opened the door to a more constructive process. The traditional route is where you have two lawyers fighting against each other, and there's a lot of cost involved in that process. Amicable offers an alternative to that traditional arrangement. There's a great reduction in cost and hopefully in stress in negotiations. So hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, so I'm David Hole, money coach.
I'm Holly. I work as a divorce specialist at Amicable.
Yeah, and thank you very much for giving us some time in your wonderful offices up here in London. So we're here today just to sort of get a better understanding really of Amicable, what it delivers to clients, what the client outcome. I think a lot of what I do is focused on what the client outcome will be. But I think if we can just sort of go back to the start really, just perhaps give a brief introduction to what Amicable is, how it started, and what your basic sort of business model or client model is.
Yeah, no worries. For a long time, the law has been a very traditional space. For family law in particular, when people went to get divorced, they would have to each get a lawyer, they would have to pay those lawyers, they would have to do a negotiation back and forth through them. Sometimes they would get mediators involved, and in a worst case scenario, the court would get involved. What Amicable tries to do is we offer an alternative to that, an alternative that's really more focused on collaboration, on people maintaining a relationship, and in some instances being able to improve their relationship through the process of divorce. So practically that looks like working with both people instead of just one person, so that there's more of an open communication channel there. It's giving the both of you the time, the space, and the support to actually be able to work through issues together, and to be able to reach really practical solutions that are focused on the future of your relationship moving forward, especially if you have children and their ability to be able to move forward, but also on your abilities to support yourself in the longer term as well. So Amicable was started after Kate, our co-founder. She had a particularly difficult divorce, and her response to that was there has to be something better than this. And so we're the first kind of service out there really pioneering what it might mean to do divorce in a kinder and more collaborative way.
Quite different to the traditional method of divorce that most people, certainly of my generation, most people's understanding and experience of divorce is quite different to that. So my mind is already racing with lots of sort of questions around that. But has there been a law change that makes this more feasible as a method of divorce?
Yeah, so for a long time, it was the case that people wanting to get divorced in England and Wales had to provide reasons to the court for why they wanted to get divorced.
Yeah.
That was understandably a pretty difficult process for people to have to go through to kind of unpack their dirty laundry and explain the reason why their relationship had fallen apart. The law has changed in the last few years so that now we have a no-fault divorce system. What that means is that people don't have to give reasons for the marriage breaking down. What the court's mostly concerned with is that you're married, that you're separated, and that you don't intend to get back together. So beyond that, they don't want to know the who, what, where, or how.
Right.
And so we support you to try and build on the fact that that change in law is now available. There is an opportunity to do things or to start things in a way that's less acrimonious and to continue the process in that way.
Okay. How do you navigate? Because although the law's changed, the reasons for divorce probably haven't, and people getting into divorce in often what can be very acrimonious situations, fight, conflict. How do you sort of get a couple that are in that scenario to come together and work almost as a team, you know, like they would when they were joined forces in the first place, perhaps?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at the traditional model, to go back to that and what that looks like, you've got different lawyers. That was actually a model that was even worse at dealing with those kinds of situations, because it's seeing it as a legal problem with emotional elements. We see it as an emotional problem that has legal elements. So our approach is to, as I said before, give you the space, give you the time and the resources and the opportunity to make it clear to the other person what you want. One of my favorite things about what we do, and one of the most rewarding parts of our work, is that we give people an opportunity to talk about their goals. So often in a traditional process, you're kind of putting offers forward, you're explaining your arguments, but what can be lost is the fact that most of the time you're actually going to have some things in common. It might be that you are wanting to set up a future for your children and to be able to support them to do certain things. It might be that you want to live close to each other so your children can walk between your properties. It might be that your goals are very different, but we try and give people the opportunity to really think about what they are and to have a proper conversation. And more often than not, that really defines the way that people engage with each other, when you can actually see what it is that the other person's trying to get out of that process.
Right. I mean, this is so interesting. It's actually very aligned to the way that I work with clients. So I often start with getting clients to think about what their goals are, and to then work with them over a period of time to sort of make sure that their goals align to their finances, and so that they either have to readjust their goals or they have to do something to get their finances in a better shape so that they do align. And I spend a lot of time with clients regarding that. And one thing that I've spoken to clients about through this situation of divorce is that you might have come out of a relationship where you've got goals but are joint goals that actually can be influenced more by one party than the other. And so I think when you're going through this whole process of divorce, which is traumatic for most people often, and obviously we'll explore more how you can reduce that trauma, but there is a degree of trauma in divorce, that you get to a stage of, hopefully as quickly as possible, of acceptance. So accepting, right, we are going to get divorced, and something you said earlier, you know, the how we got to this situation, the whys and the wherefores are almost irrelevant. That they're not emotionally, but when you get to that stage where it's like, right, okay, we're doing this, let's make it as best as we can. As an individual, the person is sat down then with a blank piece of paper. They got the opportunity to write down what their goals are. No longer influenced by their partner, which hopefully for people can be quite an enlightening moment. And then if they can see, well, actually, no, those are my goals. Those are the things that I want to do with my children, for example. Children, there might not be children involved, whatever their individual situation is. But people get a chance to sort of almost reshape their future. And that's a lot of the work that I do with clients in terms of, right, well, let's see where you want that, what you want that to look like, and paint as bright and detailed a picture as you want, and then let's see if the finances align. So I know that obviously you're helping people to sort of navigate through how you split, I'm trying to find a word other than assets, but split your belongings, shall we say.
Yeah, your resources.
Yeah, but that can include pets, that can include children, and financial assets, property. Property is almost a separate entity, I guess, but then you've got the financial assets as well. So it's bringing both people to the table to say, right, okay, this is what the pot looks like right here, right now. How are we going to divide it? Is it fair to say that you don't help that couple that are determined for whatever reason to still be in conflict and fight? Can you help those couples that are...
Yeah, we can. I think it really depends on how entrenched the conflict is. Because our model is so dependent on you being able to have a conversation, and at the end of the day, we're about facilitating conversations.
Yeah.
If a conversation is not a possibility for you, and that might be for many different reasons, whether it's there's a history of domestic violence, for example,
Okay, yeah.
or it might be that you are just at a point in your conflict where you don't think you could be even in a virtual space with that person, then we're probably not going to be the right service for you, and maybe it is that you would need to look at those more traditional models. I would say that is a very small group of people that we wouldn't be able to help. At the end of the day, we want to get people from a situation where they are in extreme conflict and to be able to bring them to a situation where they are not. And we know that our model is going to be the best way to do that. So what I would say is, if you're not sure if you fall within that category and you want to know whether or not we might be a good service for you, you can always give us a call and we'll talk through your situation and we'll be able to make that decision with you.
Okay, so maybe that's a good way of exploring to look at the process. So let's take a scenario where they've had the conversation, they've gone through all the sort of the highs and lows of their relationship, and ultimately one party has decided, well, we're going to get divorced. And let's assume you get to agreement on that. Presumably one person is going to call or reach out to you. How does that work, and how do you help them bring the other person to the same table?
Yeah, really people call us at all different points. Sometimes the conversations we're having are, we haven't separated, I haven't brought it up yet, I'm just kind of getting my ducks in a row.
Right.
So we'll talk to people about being able to have that conversation and what it might look like from there. And as part of that, we often give them resources about how do they do this in a sensitive way that's going to set them up to have an amicable separation. So we get people really early days. Sometimes we get people who've already reached an agreement and they just need some help doing the kind of legal side of things, in which case we can certainly help with that. And sometimes we get people, as you've described, who are feeling at a bit of a loss. They are in agreement to have an agreement. They know that they don't want to go through court. They know that they want to sort it out, but they feel like they don't have the knowledge or skills to be able to have that conversation together. So it might be that one person calls us and then we can have a conversation with them and then speak to the other person if they want. But actually, in my mind, the best initial calls that we have with people are joint calls. So you can book in and we'll have a conversation. You'll both have an opportunity to say where you feel you're at. We'll talk through the model and the service and how we can help. And you're both on the same page from the start.
And where finances... Because I know of situations, and I'm sure you've come across this as well, where couples stay together for fear and lack of understanding of the finances, that people will stay together for a long time because of that. I suppose trying to keep the family together and, for the sake of the children is a common one as well. But there are people that stay together because they just think, well, we can't afford to divorce. And it's quite common for people that separate still living in the same house, for example, because one person can't afford to move out, and all those situations. So it's a very tricky thing to navigate, out of this. But I suppose that the finances is a big part of that. So once you get to that place of almost saying those words, like, okay, let's agree we're going to get divorced. Now we have to sort out all of the things that need to be sorted out. So how much of your work is involved in the financial, I mean, is that something that you have to create, the financial settlement?
Yeah, so
Right.
if someone was to come to us and say, look, it's really early days, we know that we want to go through a more amicable separation,
Yeah.
for whatever reason that might be. I think because it's the best way, and you should always try and do it that way if it's open to you. People come to us and they say, look, we have this pool of money, we don't know what to do with it, we don't know what questions to ask, we don't know what's possible, and often within, the first 10 minutes they'll say, oh, we think that one person isn't going to be able to buy a house. And then suddenly you say, okay, well, have you thought about this option? Have you thought about one person staying in the house and delaying a sale? Or have you thought about, one person getting paid at a later date but coming off of the title? Have you sought financial advice? Have you, kind of done the homework and asking them the questions that will help them to create an image of what's possible? And I think that that's really where our really big value add is, to make clear to you what all of your options are.
Yeah.
So if you were to use Amicable and you needed help to negotiate, we'd take you through a really specific model which we call GROW. So goals, reality, options, and the kind of what or where to. And what that involves is what we were talking about before, setting really clear goals about what it is you want to achieve individually and jointly. And from there we look at the reality. So that's when those questions around what is in the pool. You might not be the person who's traditionally managed the finances. Maybe you need some help to figure out what things are worth, or what you can even do with them. As part of that conversation, you might be looking at the costs of running a house and whether they're sustainable. From there, you know what your goals are, you know what the reality is, and now you're looking at your options. And what I always say to people is explore every single option, even if they are terrible, so you've explored it, you have a complete and comprehensive understanding of what is and what is not possible, so that 10 years from down the track, you feel like you canvassed every possibility. And it's at that point that we often encourage people to go and get some guidance when it comes to their finances and what it is that can be done if they were to get certain amounts. And then from there, we kind of help them to finalise the more specific details of the agreement in that last stage as well.
Because one thing that my understanding of the way that the law has changed, and the ability now to have one solicitor acting for both parties, is really the ability where you're acting as a mediator.
Yeah, so we are separate from solicitors. So the reason why we're separate from solicitors is there's often a conflict of interest that arises from working with both people. So we make very clear to people, we're not giving you individualized legal advice. We're playing a really unique hybrid role that is a different offering. It's a completely different service in the sense that we're doing those elements of mediation. But when you go to a mediator, they can't give you guidance about whether or not the agreement that you're proposing is likely to be accepted by the court. And that's really the big thing that matters most. Even if you come up with an agreement and you think it's the bee's knees, you think it's excellent, the two of you say, hurrah, this meets all of our goals, well done, let's pack it up. If the court doesn't agree with you, they won't make the order, and then you're kind of stuck. So what's unique about us is we can give you that feedback throughout the negotiation process, and then once you get to the end, we do all the documents. So it's a bit of a stop shop in that sense. It's all kind of contained within the one place. So we're doing different elements of what would be part of, or what would traditionally be considered solicitors' work and mediators' work, but we're doing it in a role that's really unique to us, and that's the divorce specialist.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's interesting that you use the GROW model, which is something that I've used a lot in my sort of, working life as well. And in fact, I've sort of adapted that to a process which I use in the work that I do with clients. So it's exactly the same, but just different letters. And I make no excuse for the simplicity of that, but I use A, B, C, D. And that's looking at things from a financial perspective. So A is where are you at? How much, what assets have you got? B is where do you want to be, and I just need two numbers there. How much do you need per month from when? And that's more aimed at retirement. It would be more detailed in a divorce case, but nonetheless that would be catered for within that sort of model. C is what changes do you need to make? What do you consistently need to do to get from A to B? And what are your challenges? What's going to stop you from getting from A to B? And D is what are your dreams and your drivers? So there's similarities, but equally there's distinct differences between the way that we're using both those models. But I think that within the context of divorce, obviously finance is going to be probably one of the hardest things. Well, no, that's not true, is it? The children.
It's all equally hard.
If you both love the house,
and I think it's like
and the dog.
Yeah, and it's a terrible thing to have to go through. It's terrible. It is, at the end of the day, not an enjoyable process.
No.
And I say to people all the time, there are better and worse ways to deal with it. And at the end of the day, you want to pick the most dignified process that means that you can continue to, move forward with your lives in a way that's actually going to be productive. So for us, it's that focus on dignity. I think that I find most compelling.
Okay, and I like that word. I think that's a good way of summarising that you can't make it less traumatic. You certainly can't make it less emotional. But I think once you get to that stage of accepting that this is what's going to happen, then do it with dignity and keep being civil to each other, which you're not going to do if you're not talking to each other, but your lawyers are talking to each other, and that just gets really ridiculously expensive as well.
Yeah, and I think when you speak to most people who work at Amicable, who work as divorce specialists, and you ask them why Amicable, if you've been a solicitor for so long. I was a solicitor before. And I think it's for all those reasons, right? I think the idea of being able to help people help themselves is something really appealing, very similar probably to the work that you're doing.
So let me just pick up on a point that you made, just for clarity. So you will help create the settlement agreement, which will include how you're going to share the children. We're being very general here. We're assuming people have got children. I know isn't always the case, but let's assume that they've got children and a dog and a mixture of assets. So the settlement agreement that you prepare or help them to prepare, that they will both agree on, will include the time that they're going to have with the children. I'm not sure what the legal term.
No, that's okay.
Visitation rights, whatever you call it. But also how they're going to share custody of the children, the animals, and their assets.
Yeah, so they're kind of three distinct issues and they're kind of three distinct processes. And I think some people come to us and say, we really just need help with the finances. We've had a conversation about kids. We feel sorted out. The pet's going this place and that place, wherever it might be. And so really it's a matter for the couple to decide what it is that they need help with. So we offer different services. If you need help to negotiate everything around your financial settlement, then we can do the divorce process and we can help with your finances too. If you think, we also need help to deal with our parenting, then we can add that on if you feel like you need it. And same with the pet side of things as well. So it's really a matter for the two people to decide what it is that they need help with, what it is they can work out themselves, and what it is that they're going to need a little bit of extra support. But certainly if you feel like you need help with everything, we would be able to help you to finalise that financial agreement. So reach the agreement and finalise it through the court, help you to do the divorce itself, so ending your marriage legally. And then if you also needed help as well, we would help you to develop something called a parenting plan, so an agreement about where it is that your children will spend time. And then separately, we can help you with your parenting arrangements as well.
Regarding the children, does that include help with maintenance agreements?
Yeah, so that's something that we can consider as part of the financial side of things, or it's something that we consider in one of those, we call them separating with children sessions, so 90 minutes to talk through an issue, and you can decide whether you want to use that 90 minutes to develop a a specific plan. It might be that you want to talk about where Jimmy's going for Christmas this year. It's really up to you, and we want to be guided by you and what you think are the most important issues. So I think that's the great thing about the service. It's so flexible. You get to pick whatever you think works best for you.
So my mind is buzzing with ideas. I'm trying to look at it through someone who might be challenged with divorce and going through this. So one of the parties has reached out to you, and as you intimated, that might be even just when it's a seed of an idea and wanting to, and that's probably sensible. If you're going down that path, you want to know what's ahead of you. So the initial conversation, is there a cost aligned to that, or is that?
No, so if you're interested in knowing about our service and getting a little bit more of a sense of the process and what that looks like, then you can book a free consultation with us for 15 minutes.
Okay.
And we'll talk you through what our service is like, your situation, whether we're a good fit for you, and what the next steps might look like practically. And again, you can do that together, jointly, or by yourself. And then if it is that you're by yourself, in that call, then as I said before, we can help you to kind of brainstorm how you might have this conversation about using our service or approaching your separation in an amicable way, or we often suggest that we're happy to talk to that the other person and give them the same amount of information so that they feel like they've had, you know, the same time one-on-one to work through what this will look like for them
Independently. Which I think would probably be, for some people, would be really important. Okay. Geographically, face-to-face or online?
No, all online.
Okay.
So what that looks like is, and again, depends on how much assistance you would need, but is generally over video call if you're comfortable with that, but all online or otherwise over phone call.
Okay. And talk to me about costs.
Yeah, so really that depends again on how much support you're needing. Obviously, if you have reached an agreement and you're just needing help to do the divorce itself and for us to draft up the consent order, that'll be £1,800. There are some additional court fees on top of that, but we can help to explain that when the time is right. If you're needing some more specific help around reaching a negotiation, so that's going to require quite a few hours of workshopping and help to draft the documents and do the divorce in addition to that, that's in the kind of realm of £5,900. So a bit more expensive, but again, the difference in cost is really reflecting the difference in service and support. And it is also useful to keep in mind that that includes VAT and it is fixed fees. So you know what you're actually signing up for, unlike solicitors, which are often, usually in most cases, charging in 6-minute increments. So you actually know what you're going to pay when you come through us.
So how would that compare? Let's just take the basic settlement. So you've reached a broad stroke agreement on what you're going to how you're going to divide your assets, and your possessions, and you need that to be formalised. How would that compare if you took that? If I brought that scenario to you, compared to if I took that scenario to a high street solicitor?
Yeah, it can be difficult to put a specific number on it, but at a minimum, what most people would do if they went to a solicitor would be individually engaging their own solicitors. So that means that you would both be paying to explain your situation to someone, for them to get across your matter, for them to draft the documents and review the documents. So it's potentially hours and hours of work. What we do is we try and keep the cost low by being tech enabled. So we use a lot of tech to make the process simpler and quicker, so that those cost savings are passed on to the customer. So it really depends, but in some cases it's about 75% cheaper. So that's with the caveat being how long is a piece of string.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, if someone goes to court and they battle it out, then that's going to be substantially more. But it depends on the circumstances. But I would feel pretty confident saying that in most cases, in almost all cases, we'd be the most cost-effective option.
Okay. And timescale. So let's say that both parties come to the first meeting, agreed that they're going to get divorced. They just don't know where to start with their finances or with any of the legalities, going through to actually being legally divorced.
Yeah, so it's useful to keep in mind that as part of the divorce process itself, and you have to usually go through the divorce process in order to get your finances dealt with by the court. As part of that process, there's quite a lot of inbuilt waiting periods. So what we say at a minimum from start to finish, from the day that you put your application into the court to you get right to the end, you've got your final divorce order, which concludes your marriage legally, and then you also have ideally your consent order that concludes your financial relationship. Start to finish, you're looking at least 8 months, but that can be more depending on court processing times and how much time you need as well to work through things. So people often say, oh gosh, I have to get it done within 8 months. What if that's too soon? And my response to that would be, if you need to slow it down, we can slow it down. We can slow the negotiations down. You don't want to feel rushed, but it is worthwhile keeping in mind that it's an 8-month minimum.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Which is pretty quick.
Yeah.
and the idea, I suppose, is that it's as painless as possible, accepting that it is a traumatic time for people, very heightened emotions. But this is, I mean, I really keep coming back and like the use of the word dignified. I think that's quite a powerful message to get across. That you can't lessen the impact, but you can at least deal with it in a humane and dignified way.
Yeah, I think so. And when it comes to the process and how we approach it, we try and capitalize on those waiting periods. So that's really when we want to get the negotiations going. So there's nothing really substantive happening with your divorce. You're just sitting in these periods that the court forces you to sit through. And so we try and use those productively. So that's when we're going to want to be having the conversations with you about where are we going to go to next. If you've already reached an agreement, we're using that time to work through your agreement, making sure you've, crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, we've got all the documents and we're ready to go. So when the time comes for you to be able to put your documents into the court, and that's around 5 months into the process, everything's ready to go. So we do really focus on efficiency, because at the end of the day, continuing to draw out a conflict and it going on for longer and longer is very stressful, very overwhelming. And when I was working as a solicitor, it was not unusual for matters to drag on for years and years, even if they didn't go to court, just because you were having to constantly update your financial information, your circumstances are changing, you're going back to the drawing board. And so it is really about trying to get things done efficiently, but also thoroughly, so you feel confident in the outcome.
I think that's another important word, and obviously it's essential that, it is a legal process, it is a legal document that establishes your divorce at the end of the process. So it has to be done properly and to conform with all the rules and regulations.
Yeah, I think people often say to me, oh, can't I just do it DIY? And I'm like, well, yeah, but if you are sick, you go to a doctor. If you need financial advice, you get proper financial advice. If you're trying to get divorced, it is worthwhile investing the money in your future and making sure that it's done properly the first time around.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit around what a consent order is? Maybe explain that.
Yeah, so what I often say is you kind of want to end this whole process with 2 pieces of paper. You want your final divorce order that's going to end your marriage legally, so that if either of you wanted to get married in future, you could do that. So that's your final divorce order. And then your second piece of paper that you're wanting is called your consent order. So sometimes people refer to it as a financial order or a financial remedy order. Basically what a consent order is you're saying to the court, we've reached an agreement, we know what it is that we want, and we want you to deal with our finances, so make a financial order in the way that we have agreed. And the reason why it's going to be really important for you to do that, have both pieces of paper, is if you just get divorced and you don't get the consent order, there's nothing that would stop either of you from coming back later in life and saying, oh, actually, I do want some of your pension, or I heard you got a really nice inheritance. Perhaps I would like a little bit of that because I need to house myself. So if you're thinking about protecting yourself, if you're wanting to be able to move forward and make decisions about your finances in a way that you know is going to be secure, then it is incredibly important that you go through that second part of getting the consent order, because if you don't, there is always that possibility that the other person could make a claim later in life, in which case things will be very difficult. Lots of time has passed, and the court is going to have, and you're going to have a lot of difficulty untangling everything at that point. So do it right, do it properly the first time. Yeah. Two birds, one stone.
Yeah. So do it in an amicable way to begin with, and the second piece of paper, the consent agreement, ensures that it remains amicable going forwards, because you've just ticked all the boxes. There's clarity around everything. Okay, that's very, very clear. What would you say to someone who is talking to you, maybe, and a local firm of solicitors? What are the pros and cons around that?
Yeah, I think the pros are, well, there are a lot of them, so I'm trying to think about how to put them as simply as possible. I think cost, long-term ability to continue to co-parent, or, you know, if you have adult children, to be able to go through the rest of your lives and be able to be in the same room with each other. And it's not always the case that people who go through solicitors are going to have a terrible time. But, you know, I was a solicitor myself. I know that there are certainly incentives to conduct your business in a certain way and to conduct matters in a certain way, because they want to be able to say, understandably, to their clients, we got you value for money. All of the money that you spent on us was worth it, because you got an extra, you know, £50,000, and that was worth it in the end. For us, because we're fixed fee, we have an incentive to get things done quickly, but for you to just have a positive experience, because it's people who have positive experiences tell other people about us, and at the end of the day, our mission is to change the way that divorce, separation, relationship breakdown is done in this country. For so long, it has been a system that's not fit for purpose. We have campaigned to change the law, and we played a big part in changing to a no-fault divorce system. And we're playing a really big part in thinking, if this system isn't fit for purpose, then how can we change the way that we deliver legal services? There was a big court case for Amicable to basically say to the court, all right, here's our model, what do you think about it? And the co-founders of Amicable went into court and explained what we were doing, and the court says, we love it. So they were supportive of the model. The Solicitors Regulation Authority has worked with us really closely to make sure that the model is doing what it should, that we're not overstepping or doing work that should fall to solicitors. So I think I would say to people who are considering us, we are a really great alternative option. There will always be, I think, a place for people to get individualised legal advice. Just if it's going to be that for whatever reason someone's not doing the right thing, there's assets being hidden, it might be that you're not able to have a one-on-one conversation with each other, in which case a solicitor might be your only option. But for, as I was saying, a majority of people, I would think going through our service is a real possibility for them, and they should think really seriously about it, because if it's going to save them time and money, then that's a good thing.
So what I'm taking away from the conversation is, if you are faced with this daunting, traumatic situation, it would be madness not to explore what it looks like to work with Amicable.
Yeah, and I think it's a 15-minute free call. Love a chat, so give us a call and tell us what's happening, and we'll see if we're a good fit for you. But most of the people who do call us, we are a good fit, and it's just about figuring out which of our services is going to be best for them.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate your time.
No,
okay.
not at all.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.